Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Roberts. We begin tonight in the Yukon, where two First Nations are considering taking health care into their own hands. Two chiefs have written to the territorial and federal governments. They say if the planned Territorial Health Authority is scrapped, they may start providing their own health services. TJ Deer reports.
Chief Pauline Frost of the Vuntut-Gwitchin First Nation and Chief Russell Blackjack of the Little Salmon Carmacks First Nation both wrote to Yukon Premier Curry Dixon and the federal Crown Indigenous Relations Minister. They say if the Yukon Health Authority Act is repealed or, in their eyes, weakened, they'll look at running their own health systems. Neither chief was made available for an interview. Vuntut-Gwitchin MLA Deborah Lee Rady tabled Chief Frost's letter in the House.
If the government's not going to work with our First Nations, then it's not surprising that they'll come together and figure out our own way, to take care of our people, especially through our health authority, and just health in general.
CBC News reached out to every other First Nation in the territory. Two said they haven't discussed sending a similar letter. The Council of the First Nation of Nacho-Nayak-Dun issued a statement expressing their disappointment in the government's actions, but didn't detail potential next steps. Trondheim declined to comment. The official opposition said the government's actions have had consequences.
I think Yukoners should be concerned that the tone that's being set right now by the Yukon Party is that they don't care what Yukon First Nations think, and they are uninterested in working together. That is a concern because when we look at every challenge facing the territory, the only successful path through will be hand in hand with Yukon First Nations.
The creation of a health authority has become a contentious issue. The Yukon government says it wants to work with First Nations on improving frontline care, but First Nations and other stakeholders say what's needed is a health authority. Dixon said the conversation is not closed.
You've heard the minister and myself mention previously the possibility of repealing of the legislation, although that is not a decision that's been made yet. We are going to have to engage with Yukon First Nations before we make that decision, and so we'll do that now.
Yukon First Nations chiefs are scheduled to meet on Friday. TJ Deer, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Power has been restored to Gjoa Haven, Nunavut, but residents say they're still struggling. A state of emergency remains in effect after the community was hit with an outage on Wednesday. Electricity was fully restored on Saturday, but the power outage has exacerbated existing water issues in the hamlet. Those started with a major leak from a community pipe in January. Resident Peggy Puyatak is on a hot water heating system. She says it was damaged during the power outage, and now she's left without running water and heat.
The only heat I can put on was the oven, and I left it on a few hours, and this morning I left it on before I left to work, just so the kids can be warm.
Also on Saturday, the Federal Emergency Management Minister approved a request for assistance from the Nunavut government. That involves officially deploying the Canadian Rangers to help with the delivery of water and other supplies. And the Nunavut Housing Corporation minister says her department has identified 34 units in Gjoa Haven with plumbing damage. Cecile Nelvana-Lyle says they're working on flying in plumbers and oil burner mechanics for households without heat, but that is all weather dependent.
Once we're able to have additional tradespeople in the community to really assess how extensive that damage may be, and to really work on ensuring that we're able to restore services to as many units as soon as possible.
She says her department is committed to learning about how to address these situations quickly to ensure disruptions won't continue in the long run. In the Northwest Territories, some barren ground caribou herds are seeing a population increase, even though numbers are still below historic highs. That's according to a progress report released last week by the Conference of Management Authorities. The group is made up of several NWT wildlife boards and governments tasked with managing at-risk species in the territory. It says while the Bathurst and Kamaniriak caribou continue to decline, the Cape Bathurst, Blue Nose East, Beverly, and Tuktoyaktuk Peninsula herds are increasing. Still, it's too soon to say if those herds are in recovery just yet.
There are thresholds that are set within the management plans, and they haven't met those thresholds yet to suggest that that they have come out of that low phase and are in the increasing phase. They may be starting to be in the increasing phase, but they haven't gotten to a place where we would say that they were, you know, there's more recovery to or more increasing that needs to happen before you could say that they're at a recovered stage.
Pelosi says moving forward, community-based monitoring like Guardian programs, as well as scientific monitoring, will continue. It doesn't take a detective to find out that many Yukoners don't pick up after their pooches. Every spring melt reveals the evidence. And as George Moratis found out, it's more than gross. It's unhealthy.
It's a common sign of spring in the Yukon. As the snow melts, it appears. Dog waste, and lots of it.
Yuck. Yeah, it's nasty to see. You know, people have a lot of little kids around and other dogs that they walk with. So it's just in your way, in your face, and it's not very pleasant at all.
Bev Buckway is an avid walker and was born and raised in Whitehorse.
What we find at this time of year as the snow starts to decrease, we have lots of little canine deposits all over the place. Well, I shouldn't say little canine deposits. Some of them are very large deposits.
It's not just Buckway's neighborhood that sees increased dog waste. It's citywide. Buckway would know. She served as Whitehorse mayor for 6 years.
Every spring, the topic comes up very loudly from the people that are not the ones that are abusing the system, so to speak. And the city hears it and people hear it and we all talk about it. But I don't know that the behavior changes. And what we need is a behavior change.
The mayor has taken a unique measure to encourage dog owners to pick up after their pooch. Small signs with a friendly message.
I kind of hang some of them on some of the little trees. I just get little more humorous reminders to please pick up after your pet.
Buckway is also taken to the trails, bag and shovel in hand, to do some removal. Dog excrement isn't just unsightly, it's unhealthy.
Dog feces can lead to two types of infections. One is parasitic, so things like roundworms or hookworms, and those eggs can persist in the soil for long periods of time. So it's not just a springtime problem. And then there are bacterial infections. The one that people are most likely to have heard of is E. coli or salmonella. And these can cause gastrointestinal illnesses like diarrhea, abdominal pain, and fever. And for someone who's immunocompromised, it can be life-threatening. So it can be pretty serious.
Colbert says another threat is feces getting into the water system.
Rain can wash fecal matter into storm drains and into our rivers and lakes and affect the surface water quality. So it's another thing that can have a longer-term effect.
What do you think the dog thinks when he sees his owner just walk off?
Well, the dog's being taught, right, that's the way to go. So if you do it on the trail instead of heading off into the bush a little further, it's all right with the owner. The dogs, they learn fast too.
You can only train a dog to do so much.
That's right.
There are bylaws in place, but issuing fines is tricky. You need to catch the dog in the act, and then the owner in the act. So the message? Simple. Pick up after your pooch. George Moratis, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Three federal by-elections are happening today, 2 in Toronto and 1 outside Montreal. Winning just one of those races would deliver the Liberals a razor-thin majority government. But opposition parties are pushing back on how the Liberals got this far. Ashley Burke reports.
Canadians casting their ballots in 3 by-elections, now the ones to decide if Mark Carney should secure a majority government.
So I was just thinking, let's give Mark Carney a majority and see what he does.
Stability, yeah.
The Liberals 1 seat away from a majority with races in Scarborough Southwest and University Rosedale, 2 seats considered safe for the Liberals.
Feels like it's a pretty, decisive kind of night.
It might not be a decisive night in Terrebonne. A tight race is unfolding between the Liberals and Bloc Québécois.
And I think right now it's important that Mrs. Sinclair with the Bloc Québécois get their chance, because it's okay to have the majority, but it's also important to have a counterbalance at the chamber.
The Liberals won by a single vote in Terrebonne in the last election. The Supreme Court overturned that result due to an error made by Elections Canada that could have impacted the results.
We haven't seen a lot of indications from the polls that things have shifted all that much in Quebec, so that says to me that it could again be almost as close as it was last time.
The Liberals this close to a majority after 5 MPs from other parties defected to join Carney's team.
Bonsoir, chers libéraux.
4 from the Conservatives and 1 from the NDP. Dolly Begum also resigned as a new Democrat MPP to run as a Liberal in Scarborough Southwest.
Canadians did not elect a majority government, and if they end up with one, largely through floor crossings, it just feels wrong. And I think Canadians are disturbed by this.
The Conservatives continuing to take aim too.
The government seems committed to their strategy of backroom deals to achieve a majority.
The Liberals pushing back and weighing in on what a majority would mean.
I think what a majority does is it actually gives you time to effectively plan. That's what this country needs right now, given what's going on globally.
The Prime Minister told a content creator over the weekend that a majority won't change the government's strategy, but it will speed up policies that Canadians chose when they voted Liberal. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
An Alberta judge has granted a stay in the case between a group of First Nations and a petition pushing for a referendum on Alberta separation. Emily Williams has those details.
The Stay Free Alberta petitioners say they have already collected 178,000 signatures supporting Alberta separatism. That's the amount needed to trigger a referendum. But now an Alberta judge has put the signature validation process on pause. This comes after a trio of First Nations took the petition to court, looking for it to be rendered void, arguing it infringes on their treaty rights. Now, this decision is not a pause on the collection of signatures. It impacts what comes after that. But the petitioners have until May 2nd to get those signatures into Elections Alberta for validation. After a failed attempt to get the two sides to agree to a pause, the judge has issued one herself for 1 month, while she takes the time to make her final decision about whether the petition should be shut down beyond that. Emily Williams, CBC News, Edmonton.
The new mayor of Haines Junction, Yukon, is a familiar face and a former chief. Diane Strand once led the Champagne and Asiac First Nations and now brings that experience to municipal leadership. The CBC's Leonard Linklater spoke with her about that perspective and reconciliation.
One of the biggest pieces when I was first on, and I think this is probably what you would be alluding to anyways, is the whole idea of working with Champagne-Asiac First Nation, working with the local First Nation here, who I am a member of. Yeah. And I felt that it was really important that that the two levels of government come together. And we did a lot when I was on council. We did a lot. The Mayor Tomlin at the time was really interested and really felt that it was important, and so did the rest of council. And it was so important that one of our strategic priorities was to have a Truth and Reconciliation statement. Now, the problem being is that so many other issues come forward that is much more pressing, and so it just kind of, though it was on this priority list, it just never got dealt with. So that is one of the pieces that I really do feel that is extremely important. And the way that we're working with the First Nation now, it seems to have ramped up quite a bit since then. And there's a lot of other issues why that has ramped up. And one of them, of course, is our pool and recreation center, our healthy living space that we're going to be, that we're working together with the First Nation. The one piece that I think many people don't fully understand here in Haines Junction, that there is very much of a divide between the First Nation and the non-First Nation, and yet everybody is all good friends. So that underlying, piece that is there had been there for years and years, and to try to dispel some of those beliefs that people may have of themselves, let alone of anybody else, but of themselves, like to be curious about where their position is at, I think is one of the biggest challenges that you have, because it's really difficult to tell people to be looking at their values, especially if it's been something that's really ingrained from the time that you're quite young, and you're not realizing what some of those underlying values are. And to be curious about it yourself is very difficult to do. And so that is the biggest challenge right now. I am really, really happy that the municipality here has hosted a reconciliation workshop for our staff, and we're planning on expanding it to the rest of the community. My understanding, we're the only municipality right now who has done the full training with our staff out of all of the other municipalities in the Yukon. I advocate as much as possible, and I know that many of our councillors that have taken the training, they're like, oh, this is great, yeah. And to me, that's the first part, is the educational piece. And that's going to take time to educate the whole community. It's going to take time. With our engagement with the First Nation, that in itself can be challenging because they're extremely busy. Like you said, that they have so many other things that they need to be working on. And so to try to keep them to task on what it is important for us is one of our biggest challenges. But it's also very rewarding, and they enjoy coming together. We meet every 3 months. We have dinner together and then meet. And they enjoy that as much as we do. And I think it really brings them back down to, this community is important. This is our home, and this is important. So I think that, on both sides, it's a good thing.
That was Diane Strand, the mayor of Haines Junction, Yukon. In Nunavut, a hockey team from Gjoa has won the Tugalit Cup. The annual tournament wrapped up over the weekend. Gjoa's team, Gjoa, won the gold medal game, beating the defending champions from Nauyat with a final score of 5-3. Organizers say it's the first time Gjoa has ever won the cup. Gjoa's coach says it's great to be champions.
It was taking a bit of time to soak in because we were the underdogs at first. I was very proud of the team.
Upsuk Downs says his team stuck to their game plan in order to win. Organizers say the supportive fans added to the fun.
Emotions were high, and people came to show their support for the teams that they were cheering for.
The team from Gjoa took home the bronze medal. The tournament finished on Sunday. And Iqaluit's Tunic Time Festival has also officially ended, but some snowmobilers are still riding high after the Kimroot race on Sunday. The race is a tradition of the festival. Participants race from Iqaluit to Kimroot and back. Barry Akabak finished in first place with a time of 2 hours and 52 minutes. He earned the top prize of more than $12,000. Among the racers was also a female competitor, Mary Kilaba. She finished in 11th place with a time of 3 hours and 48 minutes. In Manitoba, the town of Churchill gave a warm northern welcome to a group of Canadian Rangers over the weekend. The group came as part of Operation Nanook. Eric Westhaver has more.
It took nearly 2 months and over 4,500 kilometers, but the One Canadian Ranger Patrol Group has arrived in Churchill. It was a long ride going from the Northwest Territories to the northern Manitoba port. The journey was part of a Canadian Armed Forces deployment in the Arctic. It's called Operation Nanook, and up to 1,300 Canadian soldiers are taking part. Patricia Canduran was one of dozens of Churchill locals who welcomed the Rangers to town.
It was like a joyous occasion knowing that all these people came from so far away and they all made it safely. Like our Rangers, our family, you know, their families were there to greet them.
The Rangers cover Canada's far north, reporting to the armed forces. Their job was to do what's called a long-range patrol, leaving Inuvik in the Northwest Territories, then riding snowmobiles all the way along the Arctic coast, into Hudson Bay, and down to Churchill. The leader of the trek was Lieutenant Colonel Travis Haynes.
There was pieces where we're just completely isolated, and then all you see is on a horizon is a few lights, and it's a northern community. And it just became that beacon that we all became attracted to.
The Rangers even got a game of shinny in on the frozen Hudson Bay. Local leaders say they play a big role in the region.
We have a role to play in helping to shape a stronger Canada, whether it's through trade, whether it's through Arctic sovereignty, the whole aspect of military presence.
Some of the riders are heading back home. Their part of the operation has wrapped up. Operation Nanook will end later this week. Eric Westaver, CBC News, Flin Flon.
The 68th Muskrat Jamboree wraps up today in Inuvik NWT. The weekend opened with a feast and drum dance on Friday night, and then dog mushers competed in a traditional race on the Mackenzie River this afternoon. The CBC's Des Loreen was at the starting line.
So you gotta do something with this because they'll get caught in their legs.
9 teams of dog sled racers were competing today at the Muskrat Jamboree in Inuvik. It's the 8th annual dog sled race as part of the event. For some, it's a time to showcase the traditions of the region.
It's super fun. We bring our Huskies. They're not race dogs, so we'll start last and we'll end last. But I think it's fantastic for the community to be able to see it. And a lot of people were really happy with us jumping in the race because they wanted to see Huskies.
Ukpik's youth-driven dog sled program was selected for the Arctic Inspiration Prize in 2025. He continues to offer the skill to new youth who want to learn how to race dogs.
We took the commitment on and then we're offering it to youth to be able to jump in without having to take a big commitment. And then maybe you'll get some of those youth that are really fall in love with it and then they make that commitment later on.
The race was extra special for one man from Ontario. Spencer Keeler was up to Inuvik to volunteer for a month and work training sled dogs. He made such a connection that he was asked to race during the event.
Came up here for the dog sledding and to be able to culminate it, this whole experience in a race is pretty fun.
The Jamboree ends tonight with a skidoo race on the river and a closing ceremony to follow. Des Loreen, CBC News, Inuvik.
Nunavut youth gathered in Iqaluit this weekend for the Skills Canada competition. It's a chance to learn, compete, and explore future careers. The CBC's Carl Cardinal was there.
From sewing to carpentry and videography, students showcase a wide range of abilities at the Skills Canada competition. Cecilia Rose Kipsigak is in grade 10. She traveled from Iqaluit to develop her sewing skills. She started making parka at just 13 years old and says the competition is a way to keep learning.
I love how they look and I want to learn many new things.
Emily Alivaktak is in grade 11 and she's trying hairstyling. New to the skill, she's already pushing herself outside her comfort zone.
Since it's my first time, I was kind of nervous and excited, mixed feelings.
Brendan Villeneuve is the executive director of Skills Canada Nunavut. He says the goal is to connect youth with real opportunities.
This event does a lot for youth in terms of getting exposure to trying new careers, finding their path. Nunavut has a lot of careers that are in desperate need of hiring locals. So boosting things like carpentry when we have a housing crisis is really important.
Villeneuve says it's also about discovering new passions and building confidence. Participants competed for medals and a chance to advance to the national stage. Carl Cardinal, CBC News, Iqaluit.
There are weather warnings in over a dozen Nunavut communities right now. Those include wind, winter storm, and blizzard warnings. weeks. The affected communities are primarily in the Kivalliq and southern Kikatalak regions. The government of Nunavut shut down its offices today in at least a dozen communities. Environment Canada says the conditions are expected to end late Tuesday. Now let's take a look at your weather. And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. We leave you with some more video from Tunic Time in Iqaluit over this weekend. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.